So welcome everyone to this special edition of Inside the Den that we are going to be calling Campus Leaders. And Campus Leaders is going to be individuals that are, they can be student athletes, they can be staff, they can be other helping hands on campus that are supporting our women and men on the WSU Varsity Wrestling Club. So this will be our first special edition of Campus Leaders. And yay, the appropriate person to have as our first guest is president of the WSU Varsity Women's and Men's Wrestling Club, James Cox. James, welcome.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
And before we get rolling, let's just remind everyone you can find us on Instagram at WSU_wrestling. If you want to learn more about the program, you can also go to URec, that's urec.wsu.edu. And if you want to donate, you want to find out more, you want to speak to head coach Phil Burnett, you can do that at phil.burnett@wsu.edu. We got some business to discuss first, and it's appropriate to do that with President James Cox. A couple really special events coming up. First, practice starts Monday, September 25th, right?
Yeah, starts September 25th at 6 p.m. The team's super excited to get going. I've been talking to people all semester at tabling events, team meetups, that sort of thing. So everyone's really, really excited for the season.
Yeah, I think we have people that have already been on the team in past years that are chomping at the bit to get in that room and get started. And then obviously we have a bunch of new recruits and people that are coming into the club for the very first time. So I bet they're really excited to get started, meet everyone, get in that really, really nice wrestling room that is actually on campus and with the brand new mats. Pretty sure that wrestling room is the same one that was there when I went to school. So the fact that this club team actually has the opportunity to have a training facility on campus is extraordinary. And the new mats, tell us about the new mats, because you've seen them, you've rolled them out, you've been on them. Do they smell? Are they pretty?
Oh, the mats are very pretty. The new mats are something that Phil and I had advocated for at least a year before we got them. And that's something that's been a continuous process. I mean, at the university, when you are purchasing new mats for a new room, like how they were doing, you have to do a bidding process.
Mm-hmm.
So we actually had to put forward 3 different bids from 3 different manufacturers of mats and trying to get the one that we wanted, which was a Velcro mat that would be easy to unroll and re-roll, something where we wouldn't have to tape up the room. That was kind of the major goal. And getting these new mats not only benefits the wrestling team, but it benefits the entire kinesiology department, which also uses the rooms in the mornings for classes, and some of the other smaller sport clubs on campus. So everyone's super grateful for us. I had this adult guy, he saw me wearing my wrestling shirt, and he was like, "Oh yeah, those new mats look great. We're using them." And I was like, "Yeah, I know a little bit about that." So I talked to him
You're
about it.
welcome.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, well, there is nothing like, I mean, I think the mats that were in there were there when I was there. So they were in pretty rough shape. And in terms of just health and safety of any student athlete or any student athlete that's coming in and using those mats, I'm really glad that we have something that I think is certainly an upgrade, but also much safer for anyone that's on them and using them. Okay, also then after practice starts, next big event on the schedule is the Crimson and Gray Duel, which takes place on Friday, October 13th, and it's in Pullman and it's at the rec center, correct?
Yep, at the rec center. We've been doing it at the SRC since I was a freshman, and I believe that we've been doing it before then. Sometimes the weekend changes. This year, it's falling on homecoming weekend. So there's going to be a ton of alumni in town. And I've even talked to some individuals who have parents who were wrestlers at WSU back in the day. So we're hoping to get a few of them at this event this year as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And then just another thing about mats, we actually have our own competition mat, which is also, pretty cool.
Yeah, that competition mat is sweet. I remember when we started posting pictures of it on our social media, and some of the people that were on the team maybe before we had it, they
Yeah.
were super impressed. So they're seeing that, and now they're seeing the new mats that we have in the mat room, and they're just super jealous of the opportunities that we have as a team now
No need
versus
to be
in the
jealous.
past.
Come on out, dig out those old wrestling shoes in a box or the attic or garage or wherever they are, and come back. I think there's an open invitation to all the alumni. If there's a great game or an event happening on campus, please stop by, please come out, and if you're at all gonna be, if you're capable of coming to Crimson Duel, please come, because I think it's gonna be really cool this year, as you said, with homecoming.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, then another exciting event on the calendar, we got just great stuff happening right away, is the very first college showcase hosted by WSU Wrestling. And it's at Sumner High School, and that's going to be on October 29th. James, why don't you just share with people that are going to be listening and watching this episode, like what's the intention and the purpose behind the showcase, why we're hosting it, and, everyone who's going to be invited, and what a special night it's going to be.
Yeah, so the college showcase came from some discussions that Phil and I had had, and then some discussions that we had had with other teams.
Mm-hmm.
And as we know, Washington State University is kind of tucked away on the east side of the state. So there's a lot of fans, especially on the west side, who maybe don't necessarily get the opportunity to engage in a home dual atmosphere. So what we were hoping to do was have this WSU hosted event on the west side so we could bring that atmosphere to the fans on the west side. But really, the main focus is showcasing the sport of wrestling at the college level in Washington. Having an event specifically geared towards promoting our sport at the highest level. And that's why we're inviting teams like Grays Harbor, who has had significant influence and who has had significant success in the past few years. We respect them on and off the mat as rivals. And then also Western Washington University, whose club has grown to a significant degree in the past few years, and who we're super excited to duel again as well.
Yeah.
So kind of bringing that to the west side is our focus, and also inviting additional teams too to have additional matches throughout the day.
Yeah, and there's going to be so the men are going to duel in folk style, and then the women are going to duel in folk style, and then they're also going to compete in freestyle as well, just because, as we've discussed in other episodes, the women straddle this world between folk style and freestyle as being part of the NCWA, and then competing with all these other college teams that are exclusively freestyle. So the women get they get a lot of action and a lot of different options for wrestling that weekend. Well, I'm really excited. I know Coach Phil is super excited. I think it's going to be a great night. I think there's going to be incredible energy. I hope everyone that loves WSU and has wanted to contribute or do something for the program, if you're on the west side, can please make it out. It would mean a lot to us to have as many Cougars in that gymnasium as possible. So come one, come all. And again, you can find out more information at the URec website. It's posted on our Instagram site. And then, if you want to contribute, you want to help, you want to learn more, you can always contact head coach Phil Burnett. So let's just talk a little bit about you and when you started wrestling and what high school did you go to?
So I went to Burlington Edison High School.
Mm-hmm.
I started wrestling in 2015 when I was a freshman. And a lot of people don't know this, but I was never an athlete growing up. Um, Actually, I was never an athlete in the slightest, like not even like pee wee sports in the slightest. Where to the point like the first sport I ever actually did was wrestling. Like I walked into the wrestling room when I was a freshman. It was like October, November-ish. Had never done a single sport, had never touched a weight room, had never ran more than a mile on purpose. Um, it was just some guy was like, "Hey, you should go to the mat room." There's actually kind of a funny story behind that. I was sitting in the courtyard as a lot of the freshmen did in high school, and this guy was giving out ghost peppers for people to eat. So I ate this ghost pepper as a freshman, and I don't handle spice very well. And I don't know, the pain was so bad from the ghost pepper that I started throwing stuff around in the courtyard, like just acting like a totally rabid animal. And that's actually how somebody invited me to go to the wrestling meeting. They're like, "Hey kid, I think you got some stuff to work out. You should try this sport called wrestling." So that's kind of like how I ended up in that room. And then from there, my love for the sport just blossomed. So my freshman year, I just did wrestling. And then from there, I started going to wrestling camps every summer. Sophomore year, I added track, so I did wrestling and track. Um, Junior year, I did wrestling, track, and cross country. I think cross country in particular really helped with
Yeah.
my
Hey,
conditioning.
James, I'm going to have you go on pause for just a second. I'm going to get my furry friend who wants to be a part of this conversation out of the conversation. Be right back.
Okay, excellent. Yeah,
Okay,
so
we're
kind of
back. We got the four-legged heckler out of our conversation.
thankfully, yeah. So kind of my journey started with that, and that my love for sport kind of expanded. So freshman year, I went to the postseason, and the way that lettering worked at my high school is that you had to wrestle a certain number of varsity matches.
Mhm.
And because we had a pretty successful team, there were often times where we would send the JV and the varsity teams to varsity tournaments individually. So we would send the varsity team to the really big varsity tournaments with dozens of teams, and we would send the JV to like local varsity tournaments at some of the bigger high schools in the area. So I lettered all 4 years. Freshman year went to postseason. Sophomore year, actually, because the top two wrestlers on the team could only go to the postseason, I actually ended up not being able to go to the postseason my sophomore year.
Mhm.
I got sick towards the end. And then my junior year, I took that step up, went to those larger varsity tournaments, and I qualified for state. And a lot of people were surprised by my qualification for state. Um, I wasn't, because I knew what the work was that I was putting in. Um, and actually, at the sub regional tournament, I lost to two wrestlers. I took fourth. But then at the regional tournament, I beat both the wrestlers that had beat me at sub regionals, and I took third. And my first match had been against the guy who eventually took second at state, but I gave him a crazy match that everyone loved. So I qualified for national state. I qualified for state. I think I went 1-2 at state junior year, and then I just went on to have this amazing senior season. And really, I forget about it, but I had this ankle injury that had kept me from doing cross country that season. I,
Mhm.
I still went on and participated in that team and such, but I had this ankle injury that I was dealing with for the first half of the season, to the point where I had doctors saying, like, "I don't know if you're going to be able to finish this wrestling season."
Mhm.
But I went on and I proved them wrong. Did physical therapy every single week. I went on and I placed fifth at state as a senior and had some really successful tournaments. I think some of the ones that come to mind would be the Spud Wally local tournament in Cedar Woolley, and then the Pat Coast Championships where I placed. Um, so yeah, I just had this great senior season. I came to WSU as a freshman, had instant success as a freshman. Um, was a conference champion, went to nationals, and then we kind of had this weird COVID season
Yeah.
where I wasn't able to compete, and nobody in the NCAA competed because things were kind of put on hold.
Yeah.
Um, I came back. I was elected to be treasurer through that COVID season, so I kind of took steps up. So I would help run practice. I kind of started doing these things that were a bit outside of my position responsibilities. And I was elected to be president in my junior year. And kind of since then, I've had that leadership role. So this year will be my third year as president. Um, Kind of going forward. And I feel like as president, I've sometimes let my responsibilities as president conflict with my responsibilities as an athlete. But I think this year things are going to be very different. I think it's going to be very noticeable. How I feel like I'm going to have a very successful season. So
So, would you attribute that just to time and growth and learning? I mean, most of us, when we try something for the very first time, we don't have it all figured out. We're going to make a lot of mistakes, and it's really it's kind of a trial and error until we figure out, you know, how to create boundaries, how to stay in my role, how to manage my time, how to say this isn't my responsibility or that I need to prioritize something else. I mean, it really is a process to kind of figure out how to perform perhaps more optimally when you are in a leadership role and, on the team, and then also trying to be an athlete.
yeah, I think it's definitely been a learning process going forward. Um, I feel like there's no solution that works for everybody. I feel like each and every person has to be open to growth and has to be receptive to growth and has to understand that that growth can look very, very different on a person by person basis.
Yeah.
Um, Something that helps someone else grow might not help someone else grow at all. So I I feel like I've gotten to the point where I understand the things that I need to do to grow as an individual. I understand that the lessons are there for me to take. I just have to be open to them. And
Hmm.
I have to also understand that I will never have everything totally figured out. And that goes for wrestling, that goes for leadership, that goes for life. There's nobody out there who truly has everything figured out.
No.
Um, and I have to also understand that there may be times where I think I have something figured out, but then something will happen and I'll really think about it and I'll be like, you know what? I don't have this figured out in the slightest. I need to start from scratch. So
Yeah.
and it's difficult to do that because it's a lot of effort. Because some people
Yeah.
go through a lot of effort through change, and sometimes maybe we don't change in the correct way, and we just have to course correct a little bit
Very true.
and get back on the right path.
Oh, we're
So
all course correcting. There is no end to that. I think that's what's so often addicting about wrestling is that whether it's our skills, our mindset, our sports psychology, our recovery, our nutrition, we're always trying to make those steps forward. And maybe it'll work 50% of the time. And how do we get to 60%? And oh, I thought this was going to work. And it's so. I think it's one of the things I actually really like about wrestling is there you never really get to a final destination. There's always more to learn, more to do, more to challenge yourself with. And it actually, I think, is a good lesson for life because no, but even the experts don't have it all figured out. They're still learning. They're still challenging what they think they know and how to continue growing and moving forward. So, just speaking about being a leader of the wrestling team, it's something that's kind of unique about the club experience as opposed to being on a university athletic department program. I actually think it's wonderful that we have student leaders, president, vice president, treasurer, safety officers. Tell me what this whole experience has meant to you being a student athlete, but also just a leader of the team in this way.
I think a big part of it is that we are able to build a team culture. We are able to build a team that that basically its members can be proud of and that they can all have a part in. I think what people need to realize is that when they join WC Wrestling, they have a say on how WC Wrestling is formed and the type of culture that WC Wrestling has. I feel like with some maybe athletics programs or traditional type of team formats, the tone is set by the coach and the coach only, or by the athletic department and by the athletic department only. And maybe the members of the team don't have that flexibility to impart their wishes and to impart their goals on the organization. And I feel like that's something that can happen here. Any individual member of the team is always welcome to talk to me about maybe an issue they have with the team, or maybe something that's going really well that maybe they want to see more of on the team. So I feel like that's one of the main opportunities that we have here. And then also opportunities for leadership for those individuals who maybe want to go take a bigger leadership role going forward and join the officer staff, or maybe someone who's graduating and wants to progress to become an assistant coach in the future. So
Mhm.
there's lots of opportunities for growth.
Yeah, I agree. I think serving also looks pretty good on a resume moving out of college, that, student athlete and also took on a leadership position, which explain how much you actually have to work with the staff at the rec department on like all issues, budget, and you want to get something on the schedule, and just kind of explain to me like how much time you actually spent working with the staff at the Department of Recreation.
I legitimately believe that I have put in thousands of hours legitimately in the past 3 or 4 years
Hmm.
put together. Um, and it didn't necessarily have to be that way. This position is something that I've created value for. So maybe in the past, being president of the wrestling team didn't mean as much, but now it certainly does. And when I leave, this position will hold a lot of value and a lot of respect within the university recreation department because of the work that I've done and the time that I've put in and the relationships that I've built with individuals. Um, so I think that that's definitely a major part of it. In terms of scheduling, I mean, I could list a dozen people that I've met at university recreation through doing this. And I mean, there's everything that goes into this. There's marketing, there's budgeting, there's travel, there's practice time slots, there's compliance with um, conduct standards for the URec. I mean, I could go on and on about all the different categories, and that's not even touching the wrestling component itself and the coaching and the um, and making sure the team is healthy, that sort of thing. So there's just a
Yeah.
lot going into it.
Yeah. Um, let's discuss Coach Phil and Coach Susan and the relationship that you've had with them and what it's been like for, quite frankly, the three of you to have developed the program to the place where it is now.
Yeah. So the first time that I had talked to Coach Phil was 2019, fall semester. I was sitting in my dorm room. I believe it was a morning. I had just finished my math class of the morning, and I looked up Washington State Wrestling, and the website came up, and I saw Coach Phil's information. Before I came to WSU, I had learned a little bit about WSU Wrestling because an alumni who was a senior when I was a freshman had actually wrestled with WSU Wrestling during his time. So that's kind of how I heard that WSU had a wrestling team.
Mhm.
And I didn't actually know too much about what it was about, what division we were in, and what we were doing. I just knew that I wanted to wrestle. And that did play a part into my decision to come to WSU. I mean, there were various decisions, but I gave Phil this like 5-10 minute phone call, kind of told him who I was. I told him that I was a state placer in high school. I told him I was from Burlington Edison. Um, and from there, this relationship kind of blossomed between us to where he was my coach. And then through COVID, we kind of were talking more as I became a leader in a leadership position and how like I could help run the team and kind of keep things going while COVID was happening and disrupting um, team procedures and things that would normally be happening.
Hmm.
So I'm at this point where now Coach Phil for me, he's a coach, but he is also like a coworker in a sense, and he's also a friend.
Yeah,
He is just this great guy who I've built this relationship with, and Susan too. Susan too. Anytime I go to Coach Phil's house and hang out with Phil and Susan, it's like being with family. So
it is. And I'm still like new to the family and getting to know them, but I feel very welcome. They have a very special gift for welcoming people, inviting them in. And I love that big log house. I love being up there. I feel like we've all just gotten off, we're not out in the middle of nowhere because that's not how it is, but it's a beautiful home on a nice property. And yeah, I love being there. But yeah, you're right. And Susan does, there's always that person, but Susan is not behind the scenes. You know how we'll often describe someone well, and then there's Susan behind. Susan is, she's in there on everything, and the amount of work that she does is extraordinary. I just remember specifically being in Puerto Rico, and everyone is taking their exams, and she has to proctor those exams. I think she proctored like 17, college exams for all the students, and kept track of everything and stayed on top of it, and just so much more. And I really appreciate her. She's really intelligent, highly capable, and just an all around decent human being that you know, just wants you to do well and graduate, which has been a real constant discussion about this team is the priority on academics and finishing your schoolwork and studying for your exams and taking time out for wrestling if you need to get things in order. We certainly saw how that helped our women win an academic, championship award at NCWA. I think it's very special. What are your thoughts on how this team really does prioritize academics and the we really want you to get your degree. We want you to graduate.
I think it's fantastic. Um, I feel like sometimes in college athletics, people always bury the student part of student athlete, but here at Washington State, being the student is first and foremost what is important. And I feel like it's pretty beneficial. Um, we had no wrestler be academically ineligible last season, and that's on one of the largest wrestling teams in the country.
Yeah.
And I think people on our team, people outside of our team, need to realize that that is a very, very significant accomplishment.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and some people do better at school. Some people are more gifted that way. Some people are more acclimated to school, and some people are a little bit less acclimated to school and just need a little bit more help to
Yeah.
push them to where they need to be. And I feel like our team does a good job of pushing anyone, regardless of where they are academically, to be their best. We've had people who never thought they were going to go to college come here to Washington State Wrestling, and maybe they don't stick around, but at least they try, and the time that they do spend at college is successful. So it's something that they know that they can do going forward. Maybe they want to come back someday.
Yeah.
And then there's people that maybe never thought they were going to go to college and are finishing with 4-year degrees, and are going on to have incredibly successful careers. So opportunities is probably the biggest part of our academics.
Yeah, I agree. Julie Wilson kind of mentioned, I'm pretty sure it was Julie, about how much support students have at WSU from their professors, that there's a lot of offers of assistance and support and help. And I don't know if that's just because the particular degree that she's getting, which is very rigorous, if that's just coming out of that department. But I mean, what do you think about, if I'm an incoming freshman and I'm going to need a lot of academic help and support? Do you echo Julie's thoughts that, the campus, the faculty offer every possibility to get what you need to pass those classes?
Yeah, so I believe that Julie is in engineering.
She is.
I'm in management information systems and finance, so I'm under the business school, and I would definitely agree that there's numerous resources available, not only in the school that I'm in, but the engineering school and across all schools of WSU. Um, Here at WSU, it'd be really hard not to build a relationship with your professor. You would have to be really trying to avoid going to class. You would have to be trying your hardest to fail to not build a relationship. Um, I've had positive experiences with most to all my professors. Even in the classes that are super difficult. I had this one class junior year. It was coding for my management information systems degree, and I'm not a coder. I took this class, and it was probably one of the hardest classes I've ever taken. But this professor, even though it was an extremely difficult class, was extremely helpful, and he did everything he could to help me be successful in a time where I was struggling in that particular area. And
Hmm.
and that's something that I'm always going to remember. I'm always going to remember all those examples of professors helping me out. Even last week I fell a little bit sick, and I emailed all of my professors, and every single one of them was like, "What can I do to help you? This is what was covered in class. Um, what can we do going forward?"
Yeah.
So just that opportunity that you get here at Washington State is incredible.
Yeah. That's really awesome. Um, it was so long since I went to college. I don't remember, what it was like. I just know that I really enjoyed my time at Washington State. I was not able to graduate from there. In order for me to pursue wrestling, I had to leave Washington State, which is why it's been so very special to be able to come back and contribute to this team. So, you talked a little bit about, we are a very big team. Um, Coming into this season, we're at about 50 men on the roster. Somewhere between 20 and 25 women on the roster right now, which is a big bump up for the women's side of the team. Are we the biggest NCWA club team right now?
In terms of men's team, I believe we've had either the largest or one of the largest teams for the past 2 years consistently. We've definitely last year we 100% had the largest men's team.
Yeah.
And I mean we saw that at nationals, we saw that in all the competitions we went to.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of the women's team, I honestly believe that this year we could have one of the largest women's teams. We'll see
Mhm.
how things shake out
Right.
as we get through the first week of practice. I think next year it'll 100% be the largest women's team,
Yeah, I
no
agree.
matter what, full stop. And that's something I'm super proud of as an accomplishment here in my time, because that was something that we kind of started small when I was in my first year of being president, and other
Mhm.
influential individuals like McKenna Bull,
Yeah.
the vice president, and McKenna Bull, who was working as the women's manager and who was helping manage the team for a while when I was a freshman. Phil taking that step forward and having women on the team. So that's super exciting. Just that growth. Um, we had over 80 people attend our preseason meeting, which is a
Wow.
lot of people to have in a room. So, I mean, that
Yeah.
was impressive. And I believe we posted some pictures online
Yeah.
after and during the meeting.
I gotta write that down. 80 at the preseason meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty
so
extraordinary.
pretty incredible stuff. As always with any wrestling team, it's a tough sport, and you're bound to lose a few people in the first week.
Right.
But I really believe that the people we have are going to stay. I have a lot of confidence in this group.
Right. Well, and I certainly think that, there's been with particularly each of the athletes that we've done episodes with, there's an understanding that this team is whatever you want to, like, whatever you want to accomplish, right? You may be the student that's like, this is my first year. I really want to make sure I focus on my academics. I may only be coming to practice. That may be the way that I can be on the team. Or you've got others that are like, I want to practice. I don't know that I can go to all the tournaments or duels. So there's that opportunity. There's, it's because it is a club program through the Department of Recreation. We're always going to have those wrestlers that want to achieve and perform, right? And that's why being in the NCWA is so important. And then we have other students coming in like, I've never done wrestling before and I want to try the club. And I actually think that that's really cool, and that allows our sport to help them fall in love with wrestling, and then we've got them hooked, so to speak.
Yeah, one of the URec policies is inclusiveness and allowing individuals to like join your team and
Yeah.
feel welcome. And I feel like more than any other club team on campus, and it's especially impressive since we're one of the largest teams now on campus.
Yeah.
um, we do a good job of making people feel included. And if that ever doesn't happen, we do a good job of making the changes necessary for that to
Yeah.
happen. We're constantly seeking self improvement, and we're constantly getting better. So
Right.
just incredible in that way.
So speaking of getting better, varsity status, very special. Just talk about what it took to get there. Maybe people who don't know actually like there was explain the application process, who, like, there's a committee. Explain a little bit about how that all came together.
Yeah, so varsity club status is something that Phil had been seeking, at least from the conversations we had since 2019. Um, I feel like one of the biggest barriers to us achieving varsity club status is that no other team had actually tried to break that barrier and get there before. So we essentially had to kind of go back to the standards that were set when crew became a varsity club back in the day and see like, well, what do we need to do to do forward? Because there's different tiers. There's a tier system here. There's varsity club status, tier one, tier two, tier three, tier four clubs. And we had been in tier one for a number of years.
Hmm.
And at least in the past few years, we had been we had accomplished all of those points that were necessary to be a varsity club. So we kind of had to work with the sport club, URec, and build build a system to where we could become a varsity club. And now that we've made that stride, other teams are also seeing it, and they also want to accomplish the same thing as well. And now that infrastructure is there. In terms of years, it took a number of years. I mean, it took at least 2 to 3 years of work for me personally, and hard work for Phil and Susan and all of the other officers that came before to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Dozens of meetings with individuals in the
Yeah.
UREC, um, lots of hours working out the fine details of what it would mean. Um, so yeah, it was difficult, but it was definitely worth it. And I feel like the team feels its status has improved.
Yeah.
We definitely feel a lot more respect and inclusivity in the UREC.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been successful.
Yeah, and I know I've had to kind of explain to some folks that reached out and they're like, "Oh, there's a men's and women's team at WSU." I'm like, "Hang on." Like this is still within the Department of Recreation. I know a lot of people in Washington State would love to have, varsity university athletic wrestling programs come back to our higher education institutions. But I also feel it's very important that the wrestling community here in Washington get behind the existing ones. And even though WSU wrestling is still in the Department of Recreation, it's certainly this program is certainly, I think, quite frankly, led the way in Washington. By all as much the way you and Phil and Susan and everyone has come together is try to create an operating budget, a schedule, training, that would all be comparable to, an NAIA D2, D3, type of wrestling experience. So I think the way our program does things, we are leaders in this state. And I hope that what we're doing and the showcase and I think we have very good relationships with the other schools in the state. Wouldn't you agree?
No, I would agree. I think Washington State University, one of the core principles here is that we are a university that does more with less. And I feel like our wrestling team certainly does more with less. And we
Yeah,
help more people with less. We get more people involved in the sport with less resources. We
right,
use our resources more effectively. Um, and it's not necessarily a situation where we have less resources anymore. I feel like now we've been able to fundraise more than ever before, and we have a bunch of resources that we didn't used to, because partially because of this varsity club status, but also partially because we've built this community that supports wrestling
right,
from the bottom up. So I'm
right.
super proud of that.
Okay, let's talk about your elbow for just a second. For those who don't know, and I wasn't there when it happened, but I certainly saw the result, the oh so special arm brace that one gets when they really mess up their elbow. Talk about the injury, your recovery, and what your plans are for yourself and your wrestling this year.
Yeah, so last year was a very unconventional season for me. It actually didn't start with the elbow injury. It started with a knee injury that I suffered in the first week of practice, and that had kept me off the mat for probably the first month and a half.
Mhm.
And then I was able to finally start jumping into the season with half practices and eventually full practices before the first competition down in Northern California. Um, those first few competitions weren't necessarily my best, and they weren't necessarily me wrestling at the highest level that I was
Yeah,
capable of wrestling. But I mean, I was in the situation where I was a senior. I wanted to keep continuing to wrestle. So that was something. And then I was getting over the knee injury. It was finally kind of something that was coasting away and in the past, in the rear view door. And then when I went out in December for one of the last matches before winter break, I kind of went into this match. I was super excited to wrestle. Um, I was having a good match. It was probably in the first period. And then the wrestler I was up against, he hit a really good move. He was able to get behind me and go for a mat return.
hmm,
And it was so quick that the momentum of him kind of sliding me by, going into the mat return and picking me up was enough to fling my arm out. And I did. Some people were like, why did you stick your arm out? It was an entirely momentum based thing where the momentum swung me out and I landed straight on my hand, which caused
mm,
my elbow to dislocate. So instantly I was on the ground going, what's going on? What's going on? And I was sent to the hospital.
yeah,
So from there, my season ended, and I I I made this commitment to myself that even though my season was over, that there were still a bunch of other people on the team who still had seasons to go forward
Yeah.
and people that I could help. So I did my best as an injured wrestler to support my team from off the mat. And I feel like I did a really good job last year of kind of stepping up my leadership on the team to try to grow it as much as I could when I couldn't compete. So since then, I've just been doing a lot of physical therapy.
Hmm.
Pretty much every week since January, I've been doing
Yeah.
physical therapy. I've been working really hard all summer training, um, being a little bit more meaningful with the type of rest I take between my training,
Yeah.
because just training itself isn't necessarily beneficial. Too much training can be detrimental. So I
Yeah.
feel like I've done a really good job of striking that balance, and I'm going to be ready this year.
Good. I'm looking forward to it because I didn't get to see you really wrestle at all.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, what happened to okay, that's really hard. And the comeback from an injury is challenging. You do have to learn, as you're describing, you know, we can only train as well as we recover, right? And when we're really young, particularly in high school, in those first couple of years in college, we can train a lot and our recovery time doesn't have to be, as much. As we continue to get older, we're wrestling more high level competition. Our training intensity is different. We can only train and perform as well as we have rested and recovered. That's a really hard thing for all athletes, but especially wrestlers, to learn that a day off or a different kind of practice, or devoting time to complete rest can be really hard. And unfortunately sometimes we learn it through the process of healing from an injury, and begin to realize how much rest is actual a really powerful component of the whole training and performance process.
yeah, and weirdly enough, I feel like this injury is actually going to do a lot more to help my wrestling going forward,
Yeah.
because sitting on the sideline and watching your teammates wrestle while you're not able to is probably one of the most um I mean it's a humbling experience to sit there and be like, I don't want this to be over.
Yeah.
I'm in my fifth year. I'm a fifth year senior with the second major, and this could be it going forward. I mean, this really could be it.
Mhm.
And that was really hammered home when I was sitting on the sideline watching people go out there and compete in the sport I loved. And it really made me realize how much I loved the sport and
Yeah.
how much I really wanted to be out there. And I realized that I needed to take this as an opportunity to change my mental outlook, because
Mhm.
in the few years before that, I wasn't necessarily finding the success on the mat that I wanted. And maybe this injury is an opportunity for me to sit down and think about how I'm going to find success, and not only how I'm going to find it, but what success on the mat is going to look like for me as an adult going forward.
Yeah.
And kind of changing that outlook that maybe I had in high school, and maybe not sticking with the same mental mindset that I had back then, and evolving to something better for me as a person.
Yeah, it's really, especially in adolescence, middle school, high school, even coming into college a little bit. The mindset is, if I don't win, you know, there's this whole list of negatives associated with not winning. And what we often don't realize is that we're actually having a lot of success on the mat. We're just defining it all by whether or not we won or lost. And really good athletes learn how to combine process with performance. And you're not going to win. Most people aren't going to win all their matches. The world championships just took place in Belgrade, and some of our, Team USA has arguably some of the best wrestlers in the world, and we weren't winning matches and we were losing positions. And but they will all evaluate, and they know they're doing a lot of things right. They'll evaluate the areas where they need to work on things, and then they'll go and hit it again. And it's a really hard thing for athletes to understand that what I do does not define who I actually am. Wrestling is something that I do, but wrestling is not who I am.
Yeah.
Wins and losses will not define me. Wins and losses will not decide if I'm successful. Wins and losses will not determine my value. There are so many things that we're doing in wrestling, um, that cannot compare, that actually swallow, the wins and losses. And as for those of us who have well since stopped competing, when we look back, there might be a match or two that still kind of bugs us, but overall what we tend to think about really is the time that we spent with people, the trips, the travel, the crazy matches, the crazy moments with our team. Those are the things that actually stick with us. Plus those one or two crazy matches that, maybe still it's like, if I could only go back. Um, so not going back, but looking to the future. Everyone just keeps talking about how excited we are about this team, how excited we are about this season. What are the things that you are most looking for? What are the things where you're like, I cannot wait for, like, what are those things for you?
For me, it'll be stepping back out on the mat for the first time
Yep.
after an injury. I think number one, just that experience of being able to wrestle someone else, another opponent on the mat, to try to see how I can become the best version of myself. I think that's going to be fantastic. I think being able to go out in the mat room again and be able to do a full practice where I
Yeah.
can put my full grit, my full self into it. I feel like I'm super excited for that. Team wise, I'm just excited to see other people grow on this team. I'm excited to see all the new wrestlers who we've been recruiting because at this point, there are some wrestlers that we're recruiting now who we've started recruiting years and years ago, who maybe we started recruiting 2 or 3 years ago, and to also have a team where a bulk of that team is individuals who have 2 or 3 years of experience on
Yeah.
that team now, because that was one of the biggest things that we had to do as an organization coming out of COVID is get individuals who had multiple years of experience with the program because that kind of leadership is incredibly important to the health of an organization.
Right.
And I feel like this year we have more of that than we've ever had before in the past. So we have
Yeah.
lots of new people who are excited to do well, but we also have lots of experienced people who are also excited to do well, but who are also excited to see other people do well.
So it really sounds like you guys have really started developing recruiting power. To your point, you've been communicating with maybe some men and women for over a year to maybe 3 years, and those people are choosing to come to WSU. So yeah, we've got to continue to get the word out that not only does WSU have a wrestling program, it's a very good quality program in terms of, um, again, I'll keep saying it, access to a wrestling room on campus. And it's an actual wrestling room. It has mats on the wall, like full wall mats. We have brand new mats right now. Again, I still think it's the same wrestling room as when I was there in the early 90s. So the fact that, the wrestlers have a dedicated space on campus is huge. New mat's huge. We have a coaching staff. We've got Coach Phil. We've got, I'm going to continue to call her Coach Susan because she is a coach. As much as she is doing, on what we would call administrative things, Susan is, having been, a longtime parent and Phil and Susan have been involved in youth sports for a long time. Susan is in there talking and encouraging and helping our students and our athletes just as much as any other coach. We've got Coach Cam Bennett. He's coming back, which is awesome. We got Hunter Haney, and we got myself, and we've got some other people that have said they want to come in and coach, and that's great because we've got so many athletes. The more helping hands, the better. We have a truly competitive regular and postseason schedule. We have a place for people who want to achieve if they want to achieve. And so we just have to continue to help people realize that if this is your academic school of choice and you want to continue wrestling, you can, and you can wrestle in the fashion that's going to work best for your schedule and your situation. The other thing that I think is tremendous is, at least here on the East Side, we've got to continue to get the word out, because East Siders are big WSU fans. And that's why I'm excited about the camp that we're going to have in the Tri-Cities. Let's talk about the camp a little bit.
Yeah, so last year we did a camp in Tri-Cities for the first time, a clinic. Last year I was a little bit banged up because it was about 2 weeks after my injury, and I made the decision to still go to the camp. So I had this big wonky arm,
I
and
remember.
I would go up to these kids and I was like, well, if you guys all do good and you all do what I tell you, maybe I'll let you see my arm. Nobody saw my arm. They did do a good job, but maybe
Yeah,
there was only one or two kids where they actually wanted to see this monstrosity that I had on my body.
right.
Um, but yeah, so we're doing this camp this year. Instead of doing it in December like we did last time, we're doing it in October,
Mhm.
kind of in that nook and cranny right before the high school wrestling season starts. So we're expecting it to get a lot of numbers there.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember the specific date. I believe it's October.
it's October. Um, something in gray. Well, this is horrible. I mean, it's the 20th, um, the 22nd,
22nd, October
27th,
22nd,
22nd. Sorry,
20,
22nd.
yeah, October 22nd, 12
Hanford
p.m.
High
to 4
School,
p.m.
Hanford High School, Richland, Washington. Dom Duncan, Hanford High School, has been a rock star. He's been tremendous for helping out WC Wrestling.
Yeah, and I definitely expect there to be over 50 kids at this camp this year.
Oh yeah,
At,
oh
at
yeah.
the
Let's,
very, very least, it could be I mean, it could be upwards of 100 kids.
yes,
Um, and we ordered a bunch of kids t-shirts. In the past, we
cool.
haven't had Crimson kids t-shirts, but this year we do have kids size Crimson
Oh,
t-shirts,
they're gonna
Cougar
love that.
wrestling shirts,
They're gonna love
um,
that.
adult t-shirts as well. So we're running that camp. We're going to be continuing to run our Pullman Kids Camp, so we'll run that in January as well. I think a very important part of being a WSU wrestler is helping the community,
Hmm.
and being a WSU alum in general is being a supporter of your community and being involved in the community. So that's something that we're definitely going to be able to do with this Tri-Cities camp, with our Pullman Kids Camp going forward, and the camps that we decide to add in the future as our resources grow and as our influence expands.
Okay, you hit on something really important, which is community and giving back to the community, and our alumni. And let's end our conversation on a high note, as if not that everything else we discussed wasn't already pretty amazing, but the let's just end on the golf tournament, and just talk about the golf tournament, all the people that supported, the money that was raised. We have a very big operating budget for this program. I don't know what other clubs do, but I think ours is significant because of how, the expectations that you and the other student leaders and Phil and Susan have been trying to drive the direction you've been trying to drive this program. I thought the golf tournament was great. I think next year's will be even more fantastic. It was a beautiful location. The raffle and all the stuff was tremendous. Just discuss, all of our supporters, the people that donated, and how big of a deal the money raised at that event is for the program.
Yeah, so this year we raised a little over 26 grand in a single day for the team. And I mean that was through the efforts of parents, that was through the efforts of families, through the efforts of family um, family donors,
Right.
people that are supportive of the wrestling community. And it's an event that we've grown tremendously over the past 3 years. This year was our third annual tournament. I still remember last year, the second annual tournament. when I had a big pile of checks from the event and I brought them to Pullman, and we had a new coordinator, which was Melanie Rossetti. And I walked into her office and I had at least 30 different checks to deposit for about 17 grand. And that was her first impression of WC wrestling. And that was a good first impression. I'm pretty happy about that. Um, so it's just an event that we've grown over time. So I'm super excited to see it go forward. I think what's important to some of the donors is seeing the actual impact that their financial donation has. Because
Yeah,
when they donate to WC Wrestling, they can see the impact. They see us traveling to events. They see us traveling to more and more competitions every single year. They
right.
see us having higher quality materials to work with, higher quality gear,
Yeah,
um, higher quality locations to stay in. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things that we are able to do as an organization. We do more with that donation money than maybe if they donated that money somewhere else.
right,
So that's probably one of the most exciting parts.
right. I agree. James, you are extraordinary. As you have stated, you have tried to take the leadership position on the, what I call the student government or the club government team. You've taken it really seriously. You've tried to create it into a role of value. I think you have set an incredible standard. Just, again, I tell everyone I walked into the program when everything is looking amazing. And I wasn't involved in all these years, all, like you said, the thousands of hours working with the Department of Recreation, all the meetings, um, all of the work to try to help them understand what you and the team are trying to do to become, kind of a club of excellence on the campus. And I, for one, am grateful. I can't wait to see what this season is going to hold in store for you. I'm really excited that you're healed up and you're ready to get back on the mat. And I just think we're going to have an absolutely outstanding season.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And for me, I mean, it's never been about the resume. It's never been just about WC wrestling. It's about giving back to the wrestling community. And I think that's something that sometimes people don't realize they have the power to do. But I think through our organization, anybody in the state of Washington can find a way to give back to WSU wrestling and give back to the sport of wrestling in general,
Yeah.
whether that be through a donation or helping us host an event in their community. So super exciting stuff going forward.
Awesome. James, thank you so much for helping us kick off Leaders on Campus. This will be part of our another special series that we do to discuss WSU wrestling and all the people that are involved and supporting. We'll see you soon. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.